Is it possible to sell IT security? Join me for another whiteboard session about IT security, sandboxing, and AccessOS 13. So, to start with addressing the question, can you sell IT security? And I think that few people in the world are actually buying IT security. There's a few people that are very well educated and understand the topic, and they're willing to pay extra dollars to get IT security. But for most people, you don't care about that, at least not when you actually make the buying decision. Even if you say that you care about it, you're probably not. What you do care about, however, is a few different things. So we have robustness, reliability, and consistency. That is what you typically want out of a solution when you buy it. And that is, of course, highly related to IT security. And I would argue that the reason most companies that are investing heavily in IT security is not because they can put it on the data sheet and sell it directly, but it is a long-term investment because they know that customer cares about these points here. And if you don't implement IT security, then you won't deliver these points. So in the long run, it is definitely needed to focus on IT security. And the reason I'm talking about this right now is because we've spent the last week or a little bit more experimenting with AccessOS 13, which is out in a preview release now. And I also spent 3 days on a workshop at Axis talking about Axis cameras as an IoT sensor and automation device. And a lot of those discussions also revolved around changes that are coming up in AccessOS 13. And I know that AccessOS 13 has got a lot of critique, and also when they released AccessOS 12, this is a long ongoing process. So a lot of recent releases from Access have got a lot of critique for locking things down, preventing applications from doing things that they once could do. And this critique comes both from external partners, but also from some internal Access employees, which is a healthy sign that there is a good discussion going on about what is the right way to do things. And in some cases, I've also been the one that have been complaining about things being locked down. And the reason I've done that in those cases is that I think that security has to have a pragmatic, practical lens when you implement it. If you just implement things from a theoretical best practice, then you will force people to solve their problem that they need to solve in other ways than what is intended for, and then you might actually make things even worse. So I think the best way that you can possibly implement security is to give people the toolbox and the resources they need to implement things in a good way. But the problem with that is, of course, that people who are knowledgeable about IT security, they will make use of this toolbox to implement it. But people who don't know anything about IT security at all, they are the ones that need most help. And if they don't know that the toolbox is existing or that it should be used, then they will not use it. So it's really about finding this balance where people will actually get the help support they need. The less they know, the more help they should get. But you shouldn't lock people out from doing things that they need to do to solve a specific use case. So it's a hard balance to strike. And one example of where it gets really tricky is the sandboxing of applications. So this is something that we've seen both in AccessOS 12 when it was released, and it's getting more intense now in AccessOS 13. And even though this is something that can be very painful for a lot of ACAP developers, I also think it's a very good thing because it opens up a lot new value that you might not first think about. But first, let's go through the more common things that people do actually think about. So in this example here, we have the outer box is the camera system, and the inner box is ACAP applications, two different ACAP applications. And these ACAP applications are, of course, communicating with the system. And this is one of the places where controls have gone stricter, both in AccessOS 12, but also now in AccessOS 13, where it's much more controlled what you can interact with the system. The drawback with this is that if there isn't any official APIs to use a specific functionality, then you cannot use it at all if these controls are getting locked down. And it's not always enough just to add a new API, because maybe you need wider compatibility, for example. So there's a lot of complicated things that can get problematic when they introduce these changes. But the intention of these changes is, of course, to make sure that the applications will be robust and reliable. Because if you don't have any control on what communication is going on between the ACAP application and the platform, then it will be impossible to keep it stable, because stability at this level depends on a contract between Axis doing the camera and the partner doing the ACAP application. And if there isn't any such contract, then there's nothing that can be done to keep it robust. And the other thing is applications affecting each other. And in many cases, you don't want applications to affect each other. If you run one application in your camera and install another one, the first one shouldn't fail. And this is something that has traditionally been a bit of a complexity, because they share namespaces and file systems and so forth. So if you're not careful, you might accidentally create an application that is severely interfering with another application and preventing them from being used together at all. So sandboxing is one way to make sure that these applications live in different environments and can't affect each other. But the problem with sandboxing, if you don't think it through, is that in many cases you might want to have two different applications that are communicating with each other. So for example, for us at Fixit, this is a very traditional pattern where we make use of microservice architecture, where you have different applications with different purposes and they do different things. So one application might be our QR code decoder, and the other application might be our Fixit data agent. And the data agent needs to read detections from the QR code decoder. So it becomes very important to have this, again, a well-defined contract about how applications are allowed to interact with each other and how they are not allowed to interact with each other. And then going into the last thing, that is the more unintuitive thing that many people might not think about, the benefit with locking down a system. So during the last few years, we have seen a lot of really aggressive lockdown of the system compared to how it was before. For example, that you are not allowed to SSH in as the root user on the camera anymore. And that has prevented ACAP developers from doing a few experiments that they have wanted to do. And this is getting more and more strict. And this is indeed creating a lot of pains, a lot of challenges for developers. But there is one major benefit that comes with it that we will start seeing, especially in Axis OS 13. And that is that if you have secret data inside your application, then traditionally it has been very hard to protect this data, because if the data is available to your application, then it is available to the system. And if any user owning a camera can SSH into the camera, then they can access all your files inside the ACAP application. So this is potential both an IT security perspective, but it's especially an IPR perspective. For example, if a partner creates a deep learning model that they invest a lot of money in, and then they want to deploy that for a low monthly subscription, for example, to a customer's camera, to make sure that customers can pay with OPEX instead of CAPEX, then they need to be able to protect that asset that they are deploying to the customer's camera. And traditionally that hasn't been possible in a good, robust way. But in new releases we will see more and more methods that allow you to do this. So one of the benefits with the camera owner not having root access anymore, or anyone else for that matter, is that you can now suddenly lock down files inside your application by using file system permissions in the camera. And since no one is allowed root access in the camera, no one can bypass that through the system level. And this is something that was started to get introduced in Axis OS 12 when the root user was removed. but you could still bypass this as a partner to Access by installing a developer certificate, which allows you to run an application or run SSH as an applications user. But in Access OS 13, this is going to get much more powerful from this perspective. So that is just one of the things that we're really looking forward to Access OS 13. And the benefit with this is, of course, also, again, about robustness, reliability, and consistency. That cameras will become more and more of a multi-tenant system. It's not one system where one application can take over control of the camera, but it's more a system where multiple applications can run at the same time and only make use of the resources they should be allowed to use. There's still a long way to go in that journey. There's a lot of things that we want to see from newer versions of Access OS. But I think this is still a very great start. It's a good track that Access are on. And we're looking forward to continue working with this platform and seeing all the good additions in the future.